Hello everyone, I'm Nitsahone and it's Friday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10. Usually in these videos we go back pretty far in Magic's history, but this week, given the banning announcement on Monday, which banned two different cards that made energy decks so good, I thought it would be interesting to look at the top 10 cards that either produce or use energy. Energy is a mechanic that was introduced in Kaladesh, and I think it's safe to say that it ended up being one of the most broken mechanics ever. There were 69 cards printed that either make or use energy, and 27 of them have managed at least one Grand Prix or Pro Tour Top 8. This list is actually super stacked, which is a little surprising for a mechanic that is only a little over a year old, but that just shows how powerful it was. With Monday's announcement, which banned Rogue, Refiner, and Attune with Aether, 3 cards with the energy mechanic have been banned in the last year, if you also include Aetherworks Marvel. The mechanic was a lot of fun and limited, but its parasitic nature and high power level made for an uninteresting standard environment where everyone was just playing a bunch of cards with energy. The banning occurred because various energy decks were the most dominant decks in standard. The 2 cards that were banned show up in all of the energy decks and made the decks too good. Both of those cards are on this list and we'll talk about them when we get there. So let's look at some of the cards that enabled this energy-centric strategy by looking at the 10 cards that were the most successful. Before we get started, a quick reminder on how I score cards on these lists. A Pro Tour Top 8 is worth 2 points, and a Grand Prix Top 8 is worth 1 point. I also include Legacy and Vintage Championship events as Pro Tour Top 8s, but obviously this list is basically all standard, so that doesn't really matter. So let's go ahead and jump to number 10. At number 10, we have an energy-powered mind control effect in Confiscation Coup. The Coup is capable of taking either creatures or artifacts, and on its own it can take things with a converted mana cost of 4 or less, but decks that were running this card in Standard, of course, had tons of other ways to make energy, and as a result, could pretty much steal whatever they wanted. The Coup first showed up in a pretty energy-light deck at Pro Tour Kaladesh, Grixis Control, which Shota Yosaoka piloted to a win. But since then, it has pretty much shown up only in energy-heavy decks. This included Temur Dynavolt Tower decks, the now-banned Aetherwork Marvel decks, and most recently, Temur, Sultai, and 4-color energy. At number 9, we have an energy-powered creature who is incredibly difficult to deal with, and that is Bristling Hydra. It, of course, produces energy when it comes into play, so that it can protect itself from at least one removal spell. But before these bannings, it wasn't really that hard to have some extra energy lying around, and it still isn't going to be impossible. The energy mechanic makes it so that you don't have to worry about leaving mana up, and you can have your creature protected, which is a nice thing. The Hydra saw play in basically all the energy decks, like Temur Tower, Gruul Energy, Red-Green Pummeler, Black-Green Energy, and, again, formerly in Aetherworks Marvel decks before they got banned. At number 8, we have a 2-drop that quickly gets out of hand, which, before Monday's bannings, was arguably the best 2-drop in Standard, and it's maybe still in the conversation, and that is Longusk Cub. This is just a creature who snowballs incredibly quickly. If you can play him on turn 2 and get in with him, he's not going to stop being able to attack. You're also going to find a few ways to make energy that don't involve the Cub hitting the opponent anyway. It's a must-kill creature that will just run away with the game if you don't. At number 7, we have a card that is representative of both broken mechanics from Kaladesh block, a vehicle, Aetherspheve Harvester. This is one of those vehicles sporting far too cheap of a crew cost, and it also happens to make you energy and be evasive. Sort of forgotten in a world where Heart of Kiran and Smuggler's Copter were the breakout vehicles, Aetherspheve Harvester has done a ton too. The fact that it can gain lifelink makes it hard for your opponent to race it. It has seen play in both energy-centric and vehicle decks in its time in Standard, and of the cards on this list may be the most likely one to continue to see a lot of play, since what it does with energy is sort of extra value on what is already a very powerful card. At number 6, we have a creature that turns into a Thopter factory if you have enough energy, Whirler Virtuoso. At worst, this is a 3-mana 2/3 that makes a 1/1 flyer, and that's already a great deal. At its best, you can just start churning out Thopters every turn and quickly threaten your opponent with all of that evasive damage. Whirler Virtuoso is one of the big win conditions in these energy decks, capable of quickly ending the game with the help of all of its Thopter friends. At number 5, we have another 2-drop green creature who likes energy, but this one doesn't become a threat. Instead, it just fixes and ramps for you, and that is Servant of the Conduit. One of the great things about all of these energy creatures is that they all give you value, even if they die. So yeah, your opponent kills your servant, so you don't have access to all colors and some ramp. But guess what? You can use that energy for your Longusk Cub or your Virtuoso, so you don't come out behind in that exchange. Your opponent used a card to kill it, and you're going to get at least some value out of that energy anyway. The servant, coupled with Attune with Aether and Aether Hub, which we will get to later, is what made it so easy for energy decks to run 3 or 4 colors, since there were 2 energy cards that helped you fix your mana for a reasonable investment just in green, and then there's, of course, the colorless land. At number 4, we have a creature that not only produces energy when it comes into play, but it also draws you a card while sporting respectable stats, and it's one of the cards that got banned on Monday, Rogue Refiner. This thing isn't going to overpower your opponent exactly, but the amount of value it gives you is absurd. 2 energy and a card on a 3/2 creature is great, and that's part of why the card got banned. It enabled energy strategies to outcard their opponents thanks to the card advantage it granted to you, and it was a ubiquitous card. There were energy decks that ran black, blue, red, and green, and Rogue Refiner was a card that found its way into basically every build there was. And you had to be in blue-green, basically, if you were in energy because of Rogue Refiner. I mean, a 3-mana 3-2 that drew you a card and didn't give you energy would be good, and this is just nuts. At number 3, we have the other card that got banned on Monday, Attune with Aether. This is a card that was really underrated by people when it was spoiled. Sure, it lets you fix your mana and gives you some energy, but is that worth it? Yeah, it is. We've seen tons of good places to spend energy on this list, most notably Whirler Virtuoso, Longusk Cub, and Bristling Hydra. And as I mentioned when talking about Servant of the Conduit, the best energy decks were 3 to 4 colors, and that was in part thanks to Attune. With Attune now banned, it seems unlikely that decks running so many colors so that they can play all the best energy cards will continue to be as successful. Most people were expecting Attune to get banned because of how dominant it had been, and so that announcement wasn't really a shock to anybody. At number 2, we have an energy-powered removal spell, Harness Lightning. 2 mana to do 3 to something at instant speed is what this represents at a minimum, and actually it is better than that because it has the flexibility to do 2 to something and save an energy if you want to. But doing 5 or 6 with it isn't that hard either, and that's a great deal for 2 mana. Harness Lightning is another card that will probably continue to see a lot of play even after the bannings because it is such an efficient removal spell. And at number 1, we have a land that uses energy, Aether Hub. So you can see how Servant of the Conduit, Attune with Aether, and Aether Hub worked well together at making what was already a very powerful deck have stupid good mana too. Aether Hub and Servant are still in Standard, so it doesn't seem completely impossible for the 3 or 4 color energy decks to survive. Plus, people are going to play Aether Hub if they just want access to multiple colors. It's sort of a Tendo Ice Bridge at worst, right? In the end, the bannings were probably the best thing for Standard. Energy decks were getting pretty stale, especially since they didn't use any cards from Magic's more recent sets, and they were just far too powerful. It will be interesting to see how or if energy decks continue to be relevant in Standard after these bannings. That does it for this week's MTG Top 10. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and share it so others can enjoy it too. In the comments, let me know whether you are happy or sad about these bannings and whether or not you think energy strategies will survive them. If you want to help me continue to improve the channel, don't forget you can check out my Patreon in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want more MTG content, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.